Home Rule Charter
I'm looking
adopted in
forward.
section
Yes,
shall
sir.
provide the
I
structure,
got you.
organization, powers, and functions of the government of a local government subdivision, which may include the exercise of any power and performance of any function necessary, requisite, and proper for the.
Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call to order the Ascension Parish Home Rule Charter Revision Committee. We'll start with the invocation and then followed by the pledge. I'll lead us in the invocation. Heavenly Father, please receive us as we come before you today. We come within the spirit of cooperation and progress and upward mobility and overall improvement for the parish of Ascension. Please help us within our thoughts and guidance as to how we move from one end to the other end and discuss these issues in accordance. We ask these blessings of you in the name of your darling son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Mr. Bill Dawson, would you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We would move forward now with the roll call.
Mr. Dawson.
Here.
Mr. Burnett. Mr. Peete.
Here.
Mr. Trosclair.
Here.
Mr. Darrow.
Here.
Mr. Kazare.
Here.
Mr. Casso. Mr. Lawler.
Lawler, where'd you go?
He is here. Yeah, he
Mr.
stepped
Martinez. Ms. Laurent. Mr. Hernandez.
Here.
Mr. Lambert.
Here.
You got 3 absent, 1 missing.
Okay. He's somewhere here, though. His belongings are right up here. Thank you very much. Before we get into the public comment this evening, just want to bring to your attention that within your package or your folders, Cinnamon has provided us with the following. Quite naturally, our minutes from April 16th, the proposed revisions to date from March 15th through April 16th, answers to legal questions on section 6 through 14-602C5 to 4-14, and answers to legal questions on section 4-18, that dealing with the Planning Commission, and also a copy of the resolution that we will discuss on the agenda this evening. Okay, with that in mind, we're going to call upon the public for its comments at this time. The first section is that of Article 5, which is administration. And we have Mr. Jeff Pettit wishing to comment on Article 5. 5.3, that dealing with the parish attorney. Mr. Pettit.
Yes, in the, my name is Jeff Pettit. In the Home Rule Charter, it's a little confusing, but maybe not. It says the 23rd Judicial District Attorney shall represent the parish of Ascension, yada, yada. Further down, it also says, if needed, the council may, the parish president may choose to hire an outside attorney. What's not in there that I'd like for y'all to consider is having the governing authority, the parish council, and the parish president have different legal counsels. There's been some conflict.
Is this in 501?
I'm on 50. I signed up for
I'm
503
sorry.
parish.
Am I on the wrong one?
Yeah, this is 503.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Or if it's the pleasure of the committee to first
I'm
start
fine.
with.
I just didn't know where we were.
That's why I was confused. Paul
Yeah.
up here right now. I signed up for 503
503.
parish attorney.
Okay.
that section dealing with the parish attorney.
You
Tell
want me to
what
come
we
back
could
up?
do. Let's do
Oh, that's
this.
up to you, yeah.
No,
All
let's do this, if you don't mind. It's my error, sir. Let me apologize. But we'll start with Article 5, Administration, and then go down the line from there. So when we get to parish attorney, I'll call you right back up. Sorry about that.
So I'll go sit back down.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You can sit on the front row if you like. Okay. All right, let's get into the agenda. Article 5, Administration. First section is that of 5-01, the Secretary and the Treasurer. Any commentary from the committee members at this time? The Secretary and the Treasurer.
I've got.
Mr. Dawson?
Well, this is in line with what we, attempted to do with the ordinance, not attempted, but what we, one of the accomplishments we made was through the ordinance was taking the parish secretary and having her report, she and her employees report to the council. I think that we should look at clarifying this in this section and where it says the secretary and the treasurer shall be appointed by the president. I would like to change that, strike the secretary and then just say the treasurer shall be appointed by the president subject to ratification of a majority of the members governing authority who shall thereafter serve at the pleasure of the president. And then add a second paragraph that says the secretary shall be appointed by the governing authority and shall serve at the pleasure of the governing authority.
Okay.
Motion.
You can have it.
Second.
Second motion by Mr. Dawson, second by Mr. P.T. Okay, for further clarification, do we need further discussion on it? Mr. Hernandez?
Is she going to still be appointed by the president? Or is
No,
she
it
gonna
would be appointed by the governing authority.
Okay, all right. I don't have a problem with that.
So basically, we're just taking treasurer, secretary out of that first,
That's correct.
Section.
And then adding that rather than being appointed by the president, that the secretary be appointed by the governing authority.
governing
Now,
authority.
maybe we should say majority of the governing authority.
That would probably.
Of the membership? Or
Majority,
membership present? Just
please,
membership.
you got to do, it's fine, of the members,
A
of
simple
the
majority.
governing authority members, or you going to help me with that,
Okay.
Chairman
Let's-
Kildare?
Okay, let's see
So
now.
the secretary shall be appointed by a majority of the members of the governing authority
Okay,
and shall serve at the pleasure of such.
okay,
How's
not
that?
a majority of those present.
Correct.
It'd be
Of majority of the members.
government- Governing authority. Okay,
Correct.
Majority of 11.
Correct.
Okay.
So
Mr. Lambert.
she would be hired by the council and report to the council?
That's correct. Which, by the way, just a little background is that currently we have that through an ordinance, that's being accomplished through an ordinance, but the only difference would be that right now the parish secretary is supervised by the council through the chair. And I can't remember the other term, but it's supervised and something. But anyway, really works for the council through its chair. But the position is still appointed by the president here, so, to give the governing authority the right to appoint, the ones that actually work for them, is what this would accomplish. And by the way, I didn't look at all the neighboring parishes, but certainly East Baton Rouge is like this, and they've got a pretty large group of people that work for them. I don't know if we could ask Ms. McKee has some knowledge of that, if the chair will permit that.
I've researched it, and they're actually, all the other parishes that are a form of government like ours are that way.
That way.
And I have Livingston's in front of me, and it says, "The council shall, by vote of a majority of its authorized membership, appoint a clerk of the council who shall serve at the pleasure of the council."
Okay, so all under the council. Okay. Mr. Lawler?
Maybe this is just something to discuss, but considering that the council is in charge of budgetary matters, we create the budgets, appropriate the funds for everything, would it not be proper also to have the treasurer as a appointee of the council and a direct report to the council?
Okay, so.
I'll open for discussion.
Yes, we need to discuss that. Okay, so the treasurer would basically work for the council,
Correct.
okay? And supervised by,
By the council,
okay,
because, we do perform all the budgetary matters. We create the budgets, but right now, there's a disconnect due to formation, not due to personality or personnel, between the council and the treasurer. The treasurer reports directly to the president. However, when it's time for us to make budgets and everything, we don't have the same access to that person.
okay. I see what you're saying. The ordinance, might I ask, Mr. Dawson, the ordinance that you referenced, does it extend into the treasurer roles
No, sir.
and duties?
No,
It
sir.
does not. It basically stops, okay, at the secretary, or with the secretary.
Correct.
Okay, so there's no commingling there.
Who's there?
Mr. Lambert,
Is that a question of personalities, what's going on, or I don't know. I mean, we going from where the parish president had working all these people, and then, now the council is hiring or working, if for no better word, the secretary, and we're gonna do the secretary and the treasurer. That's a big step all at one time.
it is, also, Mr. Dawson, then I'll come back.
So I just have a couple of thoughts on that, and leave it to Aaron to make this interesting. But number one, that when you look at the duties of the treasurer, it has in there that provide informational physical matters requested by the president and/or any member of the governing authority. So and it's got to perform any other duties as directed by the president or the governing authority in accordance with this charter. So I think there is, the pathway here on the charter for the governing authority or a member of the governing authority. Myself, I've always been, responded to promptly by the financial office and the treasurer. I think that's just me. Of course, I'm usually on the other side of this, but myself, I think that's probably something I would think would stay with the president. That's one of their cabinet, as one of that person's cabinet members. And you're right, they submit the budget to us. The president develops the budget and submits it to us. So those are just my thoughts.
And then I'll get to you, Mr. Lawler. Let us keep in mind also that, and I have all admiration and respect for each council person, but would not we somewhat be placing ourselves in a quandary if, in fact, we gave full-time oversight authority when it comes to personnel to part-timers at best? And I'm not saying that as a derogative, as a negative, but do we want to extend that power to, of administrative authority, for which we're delving into administration now? Do we think that we should posture the part-time parish council persons, which some may have some personnel experience, some may not, but think about that. Is it something that we really want to get in depth with as far as how far we will allow, by way of the charter, part-time individuals to take on what may seemingly be full-time executive type or administrative authority and the responsibilities that would come with that from administrative oversight. So it's just food for thought, and hopefully we can use this as a guidepost as to how deep or thick in the weeds we want to go with enabling power/authority. So it's a good conversation, but I think we may need to give that a little bit more in-depth thought as to how far we would extend. And I don't mean it in a demeaning manner, but how far we will extend that authority to part-time elected officials. So give it some thought, and however, whatever your pleasure is today, we can certainly move on it. But think on both sides of the issue, both sides of the decision as to how we want to posture ourselves or posture the charter. Mr. Lawler.
Part of my thought on that is, and it's kind of twofold. Congress has a congressional budget office where they have staffers that work full-time, and that's Congress, that's a full-time job. But they have staffers that work full-time on budgetary issues. Moreover, the House and the Senate of Louisiana are also part-time, but they do have budgetary offices that work for them that handle budgetary issues for them, because they're the ones that make the appropriations. They're the ones that make the budget, bring it to the governor, or sometimes vice versa. The other part of this, if you go to 501D, it says the secretary and the treasurer may be the same person if so designated by the president. That's something we should definitely take a look at if we're going to have two individual people for that, two separate people for that. Then, if anything, then we should also eliminate that. I would think that we do away with the entire thing, that the secretary and the treasurer may be the same person. If you ask me, and I think if you ask our secretary and our treasurer, those are two full-time jobs. That if we get a president that's going to designate, we've seen a little bit of that, of giving people two full-time jobs, it doesn't work out well. No. So that's something I definitely think should also be removed from the charter. But I really believe that if the council is in charge of the budget, we're in charge of finance, and we should have authority over the treasurer and the team of personnel that handle the money.
Okay. Point well taken. Any further commentary, Mr. P.T.?
Thank you, Mr. Squeezer. Just a couple things, and I'm kind of echoing some of the things I've said here. But the treasurer's has 8 duties spelled out in 5-01B, and it would seem to me mostly administrative, executive functions. Also, in the parish president's, one of the obligations that the parish president has is a monthly finance report. I believe the president is also responsible for formulating a budget to present to the governing authority as well. I would agree with Mr. Lawler based on, and I'm in favor of Mr. Dawson's motion as well, but D would have to come out, the secretary and the treasurer being the same person. One other thing just to be aware of, I believe that the chief financial officer, Bill Aaron, is ordinance, but that's a ratifiable position, or is that always the treasurer? No, it always has been, because we have one treasurer for so long, but we also do have a chief financial officer, correct?
We do have a chief financial officer, but the treasurer is the ratified position. It happens to be the same person. Now, it could be that if you had the chief financial officer was different than the treasurer, and that chief financial officer were over a department, then that person may be subject to ratification as well.
Okay, Mr. Lawler?
No, I'm holding my pen incorrectly.
All right. Okay, we have a motion. Any further discussion?
Mr. Dawson's motion?
Yes.
Okay.
It's been second. We have a motion. Do we need to repeat the motion for clarity? Yes. Okay.
I would add,
Yeah.
Mr. Lawler's.
Yeah, I think I'd like to amend that motion. I'm not sure exactly what his was word for word, but I would like to amend it to eliminate section 501D.
D.
Second.
Okay.
So I'll read if you'd like, I'll read the original motion, which was the secretary shall be appointed by by a majority of the members of the governing authority and serve at the pleasure of such.
Okay. So that's the motion. Now, we have a substitute motion first.
And then we have an amendment.
An amendment, that's what I mean.
We have an amendment to, which I'm okay with that if you want to just amend that and then just add and eliminate paragraph D.
D, okay.
Strike paragraph D.
Any opposition to that amendment? Hearing none, okay.
Wait, say it again?
Section
The
D.
amendment would be to strike paragraph D, which says
Okay.
the secretary and treasurer may be the same person. So the motion would read that first part, then it would be and strike paragraph D.
Okay, so we having both those positions reporting to the,
No,
just one, okay,
One.
okay, good.
All right. Okay, so that's been amended in, where we extract in section D. Okay, now, we're on the original motion by Mr. Dawson. Any opposition to that motion? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion carried. Okay. We do have, before we get to Mr. Pettit, we do have a request to speak from the audience on section 501, which is the section that we're still on, Secretary Treasurer, by Councilman Satterley. Please come forward. And he'll be addressing 501.
Good evening, gentlemen.
evening.
I probably, Mr. Chair, don't need to speak because when I put the card in, the discussion looked to me like it was headed, in my opinion, in the wrong direction. And seems like it's now in the right direction. Want to be sure I understand it because it was awful confusing, but if we are saying that you guys have just motioned and voted to eliminate the redundancy between, help me here, and our CFO and our treasurer, because they are indeed the same person, that's a positive step in the right direction. And if we're saying that henceforth this group believes it would be better to place the direction and guidance of that individual underneath the council, since, as Mr. Aaron Lawler said, we do hold the purse. And in respect to my other colleague, I haven't been as fortunate to maybe experience the ease of just going to work with these individuals under presidential control. And I'm not bashful to tell you that. I'm going to make some comments about that. In fact, momentarily got my card in way ahead of time on the attorney issue. I have been able to go, and I do go, when the budget is prepared. Ms. Gwen LeBlanc will tell you that. She's even told me I'm usually one of one or two that come even in, but lots of sticky notes, lots to talk about. But she has to come in front of us and present those pie charts at every finance committee meeting, which is the entire council, because it's a fact that we're the same body as a finance committee, all 11 of us as we are as a council. And I have had presidential blockage of different experts, witnesses that I would like to see come in front of our council, because before tonight, or even actually a little bit before that, when we moved Ms. Gaultier and the other folks in the secretary office, and I often wondered about that. I mean, it's called the parish secretary, that why we wouldn't be hiring that individual as well as directing that individual. And I feel very strongly the same way about the financial issues. True enough, the president does prepare the budget, okay? But we say yay or nay, and then, as I say, tweak it, et cetera. And I, for one, am frankly tired in this parish having to beg Daddy's permission to have individuals come in front of us to speak, especially on something as important as the purse. I thank everyone for listening.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Okay, the next section that we'll address is Section 502, Chief Administrative Officer. Chief Administrative Officer. Let's see, I don't have any. Any comments coming from the audience? What's the pleasure of the committee? Floor is open for discussion. Hearing no discussion, could we get a motion for
I'll
ratification?
move that we leave as is.
I'll second that.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Dawson, second by Mr. Lawler. Any opposition to the motion? Any opposition? Hearing
Right
none.
here.
Okay. Discussion, I'm sorry.
Oh, we said that we were gonna go one at a time, didn't we, when we originally started?
Uh-huh. And this is the second one. Chief Administrative Officer.
I thought we
started
were gonna
with
go over
section
each
501.
section. Am I mistaken?
Yeah, I think we voted on the first section, which was section 501, the secretary and the treasurer. We just
Okay,
ratified
Just
that.
question, and I'm just,
Okay, now, the second section on the agenda is that of section 502, entitled Chief Administrative Officer. So we are going down the line, down the list. We asked for any discussion. We didn't have any discussion, any questions, so then the motion for ratification to leave that section as is was moved by Mr. Dawson, second by Mr. Lawler, and there was no opposition. Would you like to revisit any section, Mr. Lambert,
no,
dealing
sir,
with Chief
just-
Administrative
just
Officer?
for clarity, thank you, sorry.
Okay, no problem. All right. The next section is that of section 503, parish attorney. And we do have comments coming from the audience. Mr. Pettit, Mr. Jeff Pettit. Followed by Mr. Satterley, Councilman Satterley. Okay, yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening again.
Currently, the way the parish attorney's position is filled is the DA of the 23rd Judicial District shall serve as the parish attorney to the governing authority, parish president, and all parish departments, offices, and agencies. However, if the governing authority determines that the parish would be better served by a separate full-time parish attorney, it may create such a position, and that's fine. Where I think I'd like you all to consider is where a problem may come in is that we've seen it in Ascension in St. James where a DA had to recuse themselves in matters involving government officials. We'll just leave that at that. We had a judge recently recuse a matter here in Ascension Parish, same judicial district, 23rd. I'd like this committee to consider that the parish attorney not be affiliated with the 23rd Judicial District. I think that's something that needs to be considered. I'd also like y'all to consider the possibility of the governing authority having their own attorney. Sometimes the council has gotten stuff back from the parish attorney, not exactly what they asked for, things added, things left out. I think that Ascension Parish deserves, our governing authority, our 11-member elected body, deserves to have their own legal representation, separate from the parish president's office. And I'd just like you all to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilman Sadley, I'm sorry, we have Miss Kimberly Christie, who had her card in first. We'll pull you up next, sir.
Good evening. My name is Kim Christie, and I'm a resident of Prairieville. And I just want to take this moment and thank each of you for serving on the committee. It is a huge commitment, and I appreciate your time and your effort. I became concerned about the execution of Ascension Parish government when it became apparent to me that some members of the governing body did not know what was in the Home Rule Charter. The governing body, as well as the parish president, continue to operate Ascension Parish government with total disregard of the Constitution of Ascension Parish, the Home Rule Charter. A full-time attorney is needed to ensure that parish government business is conducted according to the Home Rule Charter and any ordinances. As it is now, Ascension Parish is merely a client of the district attorney's office. The client dictates the responsibility of the attorney, and as it currently stands, the responsibilities are insufficient. Language specifying the fiduciary legal responsibility of an attorney who has to answer to the Louisiana Bar Association will increase the effectiveness and efficiency of Ascension Parish government. Therefore, please consider requiring a full-time parish attorney, and please add a enumerated duty in Section 53A that reads something like, ensure the governing authority, parish president, and all parish departments, offices, and agencies operate according to the Home Rule Charter and any and all ordinances. You may say, Kim, you want to hold everybody accountable. Yes, I do. And who, with the intention of serving the residents of Ascension Parish, would not want the same? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Christie. Councilman Satterley.
Good evening again, gentlemen. The yoke of the 23rd Judiciary on the necks of the parish council is real. The two previous speakers alluded to that fact, Ms. Christie and Mr. Pettit. I experienced it personally, and that's why I'm going to try to lend some weight to their voices. How did that happen, you may wonder? Well, if you haven't been following what's going on, you'd have to be living under a rock not to know this. I'm going to just cite two examples. I'm going to try to do this as delicate as I can. Trust me, gentlemen, I could cite many, many more in my personal experience. One Mr. Pettit briefly alluded to. We had a problem, ongoing, public official that wanted to follow the law, was indicted. I felt strongly, and polling the people in my district, that they wanted me to author a resolution of no confidence, ask for the gentleman's immediate resignation. I'm not an attorney. There's a handle on me, the old chicken doctor. That's what I did for a living. I didn't feel comfortable drafting that legalese. I relied upon my colleague, Mr. Lawler, to do the same, and he did so. And as they say, the rest is history. But why did I even have to do that? I have an attorney. It's called legal counsel for the parish council. Upon asking him, and I could have brought the emails tonight, did not. You can believe they're real. They exist. He said he couldn't because he had a conflict of interest, because his office was prosecuting that gentleman, therefore could not write that resolution. Example number one. Number two occurred a while back. I'm in my second term. This has been in my first term. The parish was attempting to do something called quick take expropriation. At that time, I had talked to multiple attorneys, as Mr. Christie said, members of the bar, answerable to the bar, answerable to officers of the court, of the law. Sometimes we're fortunate to have, or you might think we're unfortunate, for the attorneys to have some attorneys on our council, but these are independent people I would talk to who would just gratuitously tell me. And they told me what quick take expropriation with a legal term called ex parte means. Without getting into a whole lot about it, it's an ugly thing for the people because it means two parties can decide and the people aren't there. I fought that. Our legal counsel told me I didn't know what I was talking about, that I needed to continue to be a chicken doctor, and that, if he put that in the bill, it wouldn't get through muster. I went downtown and spoke in the Capitol Rotunda, and I'll summarize. And in an open mic moment, he was eager to accept the ex parte language in order to at least get the bill passed that they wanted. I don't like these conflicts. I think we can do better. And just like the secretary, we need to have a attorney answerable directly to us that has no conflicts with the 23rd Judiciary. And quite frankly, there's another yoke there, the administrative yoke, on top of the 23rd Judicial yoke. Thank you all for listening. I apologize for being slightly over.
Thank you. Okay, committee's open for discussion at this point. And again, we're dealing with Section 503, Parish Attorney. Any comments? Mr. Lawler?
I've got a couple comments. First of all, I don't know if it's necessary that we have a full-time attorney on staff. I think having an attorney on a retainer is more than sufficient. I think the cost associated with having a full-time attorney serving the parish council would be exorbitant and a waste of money based on the amount of issues that we would need that individual on. But if we had somebody on retainer that we could call on for help when necessary, it does raise an issue there. I'll be quite honest, it cannot become a situation where every time a single council person feels aggrieved that they get run to that person, because the cost could be enormous if that were the situation. So that's something that we certainly have to think about, but I think having somebody on retainer that can assist the parish council in their legal requirements would be fantastic. But one of my other concerns is it's 503B. The full-time parish attorney shall be a licensed attorney who has resided and practiced law in the parish for at least 5 years immediately preceding his appointment. I think that is needlessly restrictive, quite honestly. An attorney should be licensed in the state of Louisiana, I'd say for a minimum of 5 years. But residing in the parish, I do not believe is necessary. The fact of the matter is, the best legal counsel may or may not reside within this parish. The best engineers in this state may or may not reside in this parish, but they may work here. The best teachers, the best law enforcement officers may or may not reside in this parish, and I don't think we want to eliminate the people in the surrounding parishes from providing us legal counsel, medical care, or anything else of that sort. When we put a residency restriction on our employees, I don't think that is a good thing. I think that it doesn't lend itself to finding the best and the brightest for this parish. I think we have a parish that people will readily move to and are doing so. And if we have an attorney that we want to serve this parish that may not live in the parish, I don't want to see that person turned away because they live across Bayou Manchac. So I would make a motion, and I'm sure there'll be several others on this, that 503B be changed to the full-time parish attorney shall be a licensed attorney who has practiced law in the state of Louisiana for at least 5 years immediately preceding his or her appointment.
I second that.
I comment on that. I agree
Okay.
with your first part there, Mr. Lawler. How do we put that into a form of a motion on that for the parish council to have their own legal counsel? And then I'm assuming the hiring of that would also be by the governing authority as well.
And I didn't jump into that right away because I assumed there'd be much more discussion on that issue. But, and I was going to allow for that before making a motion or anything of that sort on it. I may not have the best motion on it, quite honestly.
PT?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Queezer. I think the problem that has historically confronted Ascension Parish and its governance has been a lack of checks and balances. Too often, we've had an administration that was allowed to essentially run the show with what I believe is a lack of governing authority oversight. And part of the problem there is that there's one parish attorney, and who does he answer to? In this parish recently, I mean, it's become abundantly clear that the current representative provided by District Attorney Babin works for the parish president, period. That's who he works for. I attended a a session of criminal court the other day involving our parish president. And who was there the whole time? The parish attorney, sitting there doing nothing. He wasn't doing parish business. And as a citizen, that rubs me the wrong way. I don't know who was paying his freight then. I don't know. I got a question that occurred to me when Mr. Lawler was talking. How much do we pay Ricky Babin, the district attorney, for him to provide us the parish attorney? Do we know?
In a range of 100, but you have to look in the budget exactly.
Okay. I think the only way that you can have functioning, effective checks and balances is that the governing authority has their own legal counsel, that they don't have to worry about who he's working for and who he's taking his direction from. It's never been an issue until recently because we never really had effective checks and balances in this parish. Part of that is we have a part-time counsel. Part of that is it's just a heavy workload. But I've been watching this for a long time. I've never seen whoever the parish attorney was, and it's been the same guy for a while now. I never got the sense that he was ever answerable to the governing authority. Never. And not under former parish presidents, not under the current parish president. So I think that to have effective checks and balances, the governing authority needs to have legal counsel that is responsive and answerable to the governing authority. However, the mechanism needs to be in place. If it needs to be a certain number of council members to pose a question, that's fine. We can work all that. Maybe the council can work that out in ordinances. The other thing is the conflict of interest of having the 23rd, the district attorney of 23rd JDC representing the parish as the parish attorney are so obvious, okay? That's like a punch in the face, and we have gotten a crash course on that. But I'm not all that adamant that we address that in this charter revision committee because the language of the current charter section, it allows the governing authority a lot of latitude and some leeway in what it wants to do. If the governing authority determines that the parish, and I'm reading the article now, if the governing authority determines that the parish would be better served by a separate full-time parish attorney in lieu of the district attorney, it can do so. And I think it should have that latitude. What I would like to see is that both the legislative and the executive have their own legal counsel. I think that's the only way that you're going to have effective checks and balances. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hernandez, then Mr. Lawler.
Well, I guess if they have it if it's already in the home rule charter, then why should we put something else in?
I think it was brought up about the possibility of looking at a
And I understand that,
retainer.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in there now, so if the council wanted to do that, they should be able to do it without too much trouble.
Yes,
And I
it
guess
is.
my question would be, and I know you're going to refer me to the finance, but for that 100,000, what are we getting?
Mr. Dawson?
Well, I guess first, I agree with Mr. Beatty that the authority is in the charter. So if the governing authority, they want a separate attorney, it's pretty clear.
Okay.
And then, this past year, we budgeted that. So we budgeted some money in the 2018 budget for the governing authority's attorney. Now, we just have, I don't even know if we've got anybody on retainer yet, but, we have that ability if something comes up. There's also language further in the paragraph that says that in special matters, the governing authority may retain special attorneys. So, myself, I think that the language is in the charter that allows the governing authority to go out and hire their own attorney. Now, whether in our case this year, myself and I guess the rest of the governing authority have not felt the need, that a specific need has not come up to bring an attorney in, but if that did come up and we did feel that, then the money is already budgeted and we could bring them in, and actually we've looked at perhaps putting somebody on retainer. I don't remember now. Rodney, what was the second question was? How
Well,
much?
you said that it was like $100,000
Yeah.
for the DA?
So that
Is that unlimited
the-
access? Or?
Yeah, it's just so much a month.
Okay.
It's not on, he doesn't work on a billable hours basis.
Okay,
You got something there?
so Mr. Lawler?
Yeah, just, I don't know how briefly it will be, but this situation also creates a problem for the parish attorney. There's a conflict issue for that attorney. You know, an attorney cannot serve two clients at the same time that have adverse interests, and it's not uncommon, even on minor issues, that the governing authority and the parish president are going to have adverse interest, not necessarily animosity, just adverse interest on something. And the parish attorney is going to be provided information from two people with adverse interests, and that creates a conflict of interest for them. They cannot get information that is privileged information from two separate people. And it really puts our parish attorney in a terrible position of possibly having to recuse themselves out of multiple issues that would be quite minor. But because we haven't, we haven't always vetted things the right way, I think this puts our parish attorney in a very bad situation. And I think delineating, whatever, the two positions is important. I agree that this is provided for within this code. I think it's incumbent upon myself then to get something together so that we have separate counsel for the parish council. I think, you know, this is really something that's going to help the full-time parish attorney. My main concern is with my original motion, though.
Okay. Okay, now, Mr. Lambert.
It sounds like to me that people think that we need two separate attorneys, one for the parish president and one for the parish council, right?
That's the direction of the conversation.
I mean, I think, I'm listening to y'all talk about differences. I mean, that's pretty simple.
Mhm.
So now, somebody come up with the wording to put that.
Okay.
I think it's in there.
Keep this in mind, there is existing language
Yeah.
in the charter as we
Well,
speak.
I know, but let's simplify it.
Okay, collective mindset,
I mean, I think that's generally everybody's mindset, like you said.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Mr. Dawson?
if I might, it's the language is not a problem, I don't think, Mr. Lambert. It's the implementation of that, and whether the governing authority, when the governing authority thinks that there's efficiency or there's a use that we have for a separate attorney, to go and spend that money in addition to the $100,000 we're already spending. So it's the implementation of the language in here, as far as I'm concerned, is succinct as far as what it allows. But it's just that, you know, up until, and I can't speak for all the predecessors, but for myself, the exact situation hasn't come up to where we have a conflict of interest, and we want to, and we think it's worthwhile to go and hire, you know, spend money in addition to this $100,000 that we're currently spending.
Mr. Jarrow?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe we're all in agreement that we have what we want here. I guess my question is there a motion on the table, which I think there is, and can we discuss that? That would be B.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I guess, could we restate the motion?
Yes. Mr. Lawler?
Yes, the motion would be to eliminate the requirement, the residency requirement. And it would simply be the full-time parish attorney shall be a licensed attorney who has practiced law in the state of Louisiana for at least 5 years immediately preceding his or her appointment.
And also, at this point, do you think that, just for further clarification, the full-time, would full-time be stricken and the retained parish attorney or the parish attorney? Because you already have authorization to retain an attorney. And you already said if we hired one, well, if the parish hired one on a full-time basis, the cost would probably be exorbitant. But is it necessary, that's just a question, to take out the wordage full-time instead of just have the parish attorney?
Here's why I left it in there. Because I think right now, based on the reading of this code, the parish governing authority has the ability to hire an attorney that does not reside in this parish, because this is specifically stating the full-time attorney, and the parish has the ability to hire people part-time and put them on retainer. The full-time is talking about the person working for the parish full-time, whether it be through the 23rd JDC or any other
Contract.
So that's why I would leave it in there.
Okay.
But I'd be open to disagreement on that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
And just
Mr. Burnett.
just a simple question on, basically, because of some of the statements that was arose by Councilman Satterley. So the charter states that the governing authority can retain an attorney. Is that to be voted on by the entire governing authority or any individual within the council?
I would think that would take majority vote of the entire council.
Okay.
Yes.
Meaning that, because some of the statements he mentioned that he sought some of his other council members for legal rights instead of going into seeking outside, I guess, legal
counsel. Yeah. But I would imagine, well, I feel certain that in that context, it's the majority of the council members. Any further clarification before we move on the motion? Does everybody have a firm understanding of the motion? So it's been moved by Mr. Lawler, second by, was Mr. Petey?
I believe it was.
Yes, sir, you did. Okay. Any opposition to the motion? Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion is hereby adopted. Thank you. Okay, next we'll move to Section D, which is Section 504, Human Resources Department. Human Resources Department. Let's see.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Could I, not sure what the proper term is, but I'd like to request that the agenda be adjusted slightly. I have a meeting I have to be at 6:30, and I'd like to move that we move up the request to amend the resolution ahead of this agenda item, if it's satisfactory with the.
Put that in motion
with the
form,
other
we get a
members.
second, we can do it all.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Dawson, second by Mr. Petey, that we move forward to Section 6, which is the discussion/request to council to amend resolution that formed the Home Rule Charter Revision Committee to extend the deadline for findings and recommendations by the committee. That is a part of your folder, part of your package that the secretary furnished us with. Any opposition to that motion? Hearing none? Okay, we are hereby going to that specific section. Mr. Dawson.
And I have a proposed amendment to this, to the resolution. So if you go to Exhibit A, the last corky dot on here has the Charter Revision Committee shall report its findings and recommendations to the Parish Council by May 31st, 2018. I'd like to revise that to say the Charter Revision Committee shall report any findings and recommendations to the Parish Council by May 31st, 2018, that the committee desires to put on a ballot in 2018. The committee may report additional findings and recommendations, may report other additional findings and recommendations upon their completion.
Okay. For clarity, again.
For clarity, so, I mean, what, so some background on this, that May 31st, 2018 is about the deadline for getting something on the ballot in 2018. It may be a few weeks,
Give or
plus
take.
or minus that, really more plus, I guess. But in order to have something on the ballot in, I think November, the date's already passed, but the election date in December, if there are no proposals from the committee by this May 31st, then there are no ballots that the committee can put something on in 2018. So then that would change that priority, and then after that, the committee work at its pleasure to any other changes that it may choose to put on a ballot in 2019.
Okay. So succinctly, the motion is basically saying that it will allow us to put any information or any revisions or whatever information we want to go on the ballot, we must have that in by the 31st of next month, per se. Any further discussion on that? Any further clarity needed?
So it's basically leaving it as is, I mean.
No, it's basically telling us that if we want any items to go on the next ballot, we have to have that business handled or completed by May 31st. And any business that's left, then it can go.
So that wouldn't end
another
the
ballot.
committee at the end of May 31st, and the committee could choose to come back and make additional recommendations. I think there's a possibility that a pathway would be that one proposal would go to the voters in 2018, and based on what the result of that is, then additional changes would be made to the charter based on what the result of that first election is.
Any further discussion? Need a second. PT, further discussion?
What's the hurry? You got the election dates. If you're targeting the December, the December election date, it's going to be the only thing on the ballot. Turnout's going to be 3-5%. Okay, what's the hurry? You got spring elections too. You got March and April. Probably turnout be a little better than December. You're going to be coming off of a general election date or a primary election date where you're going to have congressional races on the ballot. Mr. Graves, I believe, is running. Probably have whatever competition he has. That's very unlikely to be a runoff in that case, in that matter. We have a parish judges race on the ballot in November. I've only heard about 2 potential candidates, so you're not going to have a runoff there. So this is going to be the only thing on the ballot. December ballot. Are we targeting? What's the hurry? We got election dates in March and April next year. The other thing is to certify any ballot measure for the December election. The Secretary of State has to certify it by October 15th. Checked on that, rechecked on that today. So, what's got to happen? A recommendation to the council. A council by 2/3 vote can call for an election. It's got to go to the bond commission. So I don't know if we're in that big of a hurry. Anyway, it sounds like Mr. Dawson's put a lot of thought into it, so I'll defer to him on that. But I'm in no hurry. This is a charter that's been around for 25 years. It ain't going anywhere. It's going to be there next year, okay, and the year after that. And I would just like to know I don't sense any sense of urgency in this committee. I'm more concerned that we get it right, okay? And if it takes, I signed up for the long haul. If it takes 18 months like the Charter Commission did, that's what I signed up for. And I don't see any immediacy to anything we're doing here. And I think, in fact, a lot of what we've discussed could benefit from more vetting and more discussion. So I would just ask, what's the hurry?
So is there a motion?
Well, no, we're just discussing it right now.
Well, I have a
for
motion.
clarity.
The
Yeah,
motion
Mr.
is
Dawson has a
to make
motion,
that amendment.
but we hadn't seconded yet.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Object.
So I got to comment to Mr. PT. No, I don't know what's going to be on the ballot in December of 2018. Nobody knows. You know, what it's, if there's a runoff in some of these primary elections, then they'll be on there. If there are other ballot initiatives, then they'll be on there. I don't think there's anything that'll tell you there's going to be more in March or April than there is in December. I think the ballot is, you know, you won't know either one of those until it comes time for the deadline. Now, I did look through Mr. Dugas at making this ballot in December. So I didn't bring the exact schedule with me, but it's very close. It's about June is about the deadline by the time the council has to adopt a resolution, the council has to adopt an ordinance, the bond commission, you've got to get on their schedule, and then the secretary, as you said, the Secretary of State. So, you know, I could get that and bring it to you, but I feel, I do know this, that I think it's June 15th, somewhere in that range is about, you know, what, according to Mr. Dugas' schedule, is about when a decision needs to be made. So I added 2 weeks to that to go to the May 31st. Again, and, you know, let's let the elephant out of the room, is that if, you know, I think that the changes that we're talking about today, almost all of them are influenced by the decision of whether there's going to be a parish manager or an elected parish president. So I really feel like that, you know, that's a decision that has to be made, not has to be, excuse me there, that should be made first and then come back and make these changes based on what the voters' wishes are as far as an elected or appointed parish manager, if the council chooses to do that and if the committee chooses to do that. But, you know, I think it's an answer that we probably should answer first. That's my opinion. And then, based on that, the 2019 is an election year. So I think it's only fair for people that are running for the council positions and the people that are running for parish president positions know which form of government they're running for. So that all begins in early 2019.
Okay. Well, we got Mr. Lawler, then we're going to come back to Mr. Petey.
One of the things that I'd like to add to this is that as far as the timing goes, we have come up with many good ideas so far. We've only been doing this for a couple of weeks now. I'm one less than the rest of y'all. But we've come up with some really good ideas. And one thing that I've learned and seen through my years is that if you put too much on the ballot, things get voted down just out of habit. People do not vote for it. And I think this gives us the opportunity to parcel things out. Instead of overloading the public with 18, 19 different amendments, different changes to the charter, which will increase the likelihood that some really good ideas get voted down, we can slowly move this stuff out and make sure it works and be very deliberative. On some issues, we've had some great discussions on. It's probably going to take past May 31st. In fact, I've heard from many people say, we're cutting this short. Well, this gives us the opportunity not to cut this time period short, not to cut the discussion short. But if we have ideas that can be moved forward this year, we've heard some tonight, we've heard some in prior meetings, those may be able to go on the ballot in December, and then we can have some more on the ballot in the spring of 2019, and so on and so on. So I think this is a pretty good idea, and it'll increase the likelihood that some good ideas get favorably looked upon by the public. And I think there's some good ideas, and hopefully they'll get voted favorably and get passed.
Mr. Petey?
To respond to what Mr. Dawson said a minute ago, I mean, the elephant is out of the bag now. I mean, I'm looking at the resolution that created this committee, provided in our packet again tonight, and it doesn't say anything about the elephant that we're talking about right now. This committee was tasked with revising the existing charter. I'm looking at it right now. And if we're talking about something else, as a citizen, I would feel less insulted if you would have done that openly and honestly, and we were here discussing a better ascensions plan. But whatever this subterfuge is, if it's about better ascension, let's get them here, and let's vet their proposal with at least the vigor that we're going through the existing charter. because I've read their proposal, and I've got, they need more than 2 days to answer all the questions I have. So if we're trying to jam this thing through, this elephant, we're trying to jam it through that crack without vetting it at all, I mean, I'd like a commitment from the chair that we're at least going to examine the proposed tear down and replacement of our 25-year-old home rule charter, that we're going to examine it with at least as much rigor as we've done with the current charter. And I suspect that that is not going to happen. And I believe to the very core of my being that that is an intentional subterfuge committed by this council. By the way, there was a committee of the whole started by the chairman's fiat last year that specifically tasked the current parish council, sitting as the committee of the whole, with vetting a better ascensions proposal. That's what it said. Now, why that didn't happen, I don't know. I don't know. But that's what that committee of the whole, it wasn't a resolution, it was a chairman's fiat. The resolution I'm looking at that formed this committee doesn't say anything about a better ascension. So my biggest concern is that this is being jammed through without the opportunity to vet a better ascensions proposal with as much vigor and as much rigor as we're doing with the current charter. That's all I have.
Thank you. For the record, we have committed to a fair and equitable process. We have already stated that there will be time allotted for a better ascension and any other group that wants to come before this committee. So we're looking at the first part of May to exercise that part of vetting, or at least hearing from organizations per se. Before we look, we have Mr. Lambert, did you have?
The school system has been accused many times of putting things on just a special ballot, so that all their people will go vote. I think it's really important that we make a great effort to make sure that as many people can vote on this thing as possible. So we need to look at the time frames through which we need to do this. I don't know all the exact dates like Wade does, but I think it's really important that we allow as many people to vote on this as we possibly can, just because of the process.
Thank you. Mr. P.T.?
Well, if that's, and I'm all in favor of that, Coach. I mean, that's probably the most rational, wisest thing I've heard during this entire process. And every election cycle, the highest turnout in this parish is during the president, our national presidential election, which is 2020, which, by the way, would coincide with a decennial census that will makes more sense. And I think we're still going to be dealing with the elephant no matter what, Coach. But if that's that worthy goal that you just stated, the highest turnout election is always the presidential election.
Well, I'm not saying it needs to be the highest, but it surely doesn't need to be when we're the only thing on the ballot for sure, or just one or two. I mean, I don't have an answer again, but that's something I think is real important, that people feel like that we tried to give everybody a fair shot at what needs to be done.
And to your point, and I totally understand and agree with what you're saying, Coach, but also I think we have to, you make the people of the parish aware of what's on the ballot, and if it's important to them, they'll come out and vote.
Thank you. Mr. Lawler, then Mr. Trosclair.
I echo the sentiments. All this talk, and respectfully so, about the highest turnout, that falls on the people. The people are the ones, and I encourage people to get out there and vote every single time. This falls upon the people to get out and vote. Because we have the highest election at a presidential election, the highest turnout in a presidential election, that means nothing as far as the opportunity to vote. Every single person has the opportunity, the right, and the ability to get out there and vote. We've made a point of getting some early voting precincts in Prairieville to make it easier on people to vote. Every election should have high turnout. I think we're on a path right now. I know several of us are looking on the council to look into some sort of funding arrangement for the CARA and the animals. And I know there's a lot of talk about not putting it on a special election. Well, it could fall in December. And if that's the case, are we going to say that we shouldn't put that on a December ballot or a December ballot, that we should hold that off until a presidential election? Every single person out there has to get up off their butts and go vote. It's as simple as that. We've fought for this right. We've got the right. Go use it.
I would second Mr. Lawler's comments on that. Everybody has the right to vote every time the polls are open. And to address your concerns, Coach Van, the reason why I think that putting it earlier, because people need to know what the form of government's going to be in the following election, is why the time frame of that is.
Mr. Hernandez.
I guess, just to make a comment on what Mr. P.T. was bringing up, this is a Home Rule Charter Commission. You have a parish president. We're here to look at everything that's there and see what's the best option for the people in the parish to vote on. Whether that's ABA or re-electing a parish president, I think that's what we're tasked to do. Just flipping through a Better Ascensions, the majority of the changes that they want to make to the Home Rule Charter, I didn't read through it, but just looking at it, it looks like the majority of it is changes to parish manager versus parish president and the compensation and some of the stuff there. So I do agree with you. It needs to be drugged out in front of everybody, just like what we're doing here. But I guess to get to that point, we're going to have to offer up something and let the people decide which way they want to go. That's just my comment.
Okay.
And I think it's I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
It's a vote. You know, a lot of people are concerned, and I think a lot of us has voiced this up here. The people are scared of losing a vote for a parish president. But they're also scared of not being able to vote for the form of government that they're wanting. So I guess we need to look at that also.
Yeah. And to, before we move further, I think that basically right now we're finding ourselves in the middle of two separate spheres. One, the psychology of the arena. Two, community education and sensitizing on the subject matter. That's where we're finding ourselves. Now, keep in mind, we are a committee. We are not a commission. And by definition, there's a difference between the two. Our duties and responsibilities, as I appreciate them, is to vet the subject matters from A to Z of the present existing charter, and then make recommendations/suggestions to the parish council. From there, the parish council will basically say what goes on the ballot or what does not go on the ballot. So it's healthy. It's a very, very healthy conversation we're having, but it's it's deeper water that has to be swam before we can really come to an absolute resolution and then get the buy-in or some sense of relatability from that of the governing authority, the parish council. So this is where we are. Now, I have to acknowledge an oversight. It's my fault, and we did have one individual in the audience that wanted to speak on the topic 6, and that's Ms. Kimberly Christie. If you all don't mind freezing, because we have a motion that's been seconded and an objection. So we're going to have to vote, but before that transpires, we would like to welcome Ms. Kimberly Christie back to the podium. Sorry about that oversight.
Thank you. I'd just like to read Article 9, Section 9. An amendment to or repeal of this charter may be proposed by at least 2/3 of the members of the governing authority or by a petition. As far as I understand it, ABA is an organization. Some members of the organization, some of the supporters, are residents of Ascension Parish. Some may not be. We're making room for an organization, and we don't know who the supporters are. Who's really behind this? We don't know. We will never know. In order to thoroughly vet the ideas, bring in experts, examine intended and unintended consequences for the work that has gone forth thus far, it is important to extend the time. I believe that the committee should be allowed to go forth for as long as it takes to complete the task that has been put before you. Everyone's ideas should be given the same thorough consideration. And just as we stepped through the living document, we must step through any proposed charter with the same care and attention to detail. To do any less would be an injustice to the residents of Ascension Parish. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, getting back to the business beforehand. We do have a motion and a second by Mr. Dawson and an objection. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Jarrow?
We through with the audience?
Yeah, I just said there was only one for that particular section coming from the audience. So yes, we're through. Now the ball is back in our court.
All right. Just a few little comments, sitting back, listening. First of all, when I was approached, the resolution originally brought forth, stated, and which we signed on says we had to report our findings by May 31st, 2018. So I don't see where that should be a surprise to anybody. Anyway. That was part of the original resolution. As far as what we bring forth, I think it's up to us to make sure we get the word out there. Being on the school board for a few years, yeah, we've heard as far as elections on, we were trying to sneak stuff by. You want to do what's best for the people and let as many as you vote can. We can, but I look at it in a couple of ways. One of them is the people aren't voting now anyway. I don't know how to get them out there, but they're not turning out. We need to get them. You look in here, we've got the same folks coming here that's giving input. Okay, I mean, so we want to put it on an election with everything else on the ballot, so they're voting for their person, and then they got to flip a vote for home rule charter, which they don't have a clue about. They don't know, hey, I don't want any changes, I'm going against it. Boom, it's defeated. So if you put it in one that's a little lightly less attended, or if it's none, they have to make themselves educated to make a vote on it. I say they do, but I don't think a lot of our voters are these days, and that's disappointing. But I think there's, 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. But I don't think anybody's trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes right here. I think we all want to do what we think is the right thing and present it forward.
Thank you. Okay, now we have to get back to the motion that's been made and second and discussed and objected.
Can we get the motion restated, because I may rescind my objection?
Okay, right.
Well, you're going to test me here.
I'm trying to make nice.
Talking about the psychology of the arena. Okay,
Hey,
Mr. Dawson.
you can't close the barn door when the elephant's out the bag, right? I don't.
Gotcha.
So I stand to be corrected by Ms. McKee because I made a few changes winging it here. But anyway, the Charter Revision Committee shall report any findings and recommendations to the Parish Council by May 31st, 2018 that the committee desires to put on a ballot in 2018. The committee may also report other additional findings and recommendations upon their completion.
Question?
I could add
PT.
some clarification to
So,
that upon their completion.
Are we envisioning an extension of the deadline right now, or are we going to make that determination later, or what? Just looking for some guidance here.
I believe that's what this is doing. This is
Okay.
extending the
So
deadline.
we are extending the deadline
On
right
any
now.
topics that we
Okay.
feel are not
Yeah.
Yeah,
ready.
we're leaving, okay.
Is that fair, Councilman Dalton?
Yeah, it extends the deadline for anything beyond the 2018 ballot.
If we make the decision as this committee, if we decide to extend it. And we're, okay.
Correct.
All right.
Exactly.
I'll withdraw my objection.
Okay. Mr. Burnett?
Yeah, I want to make that, so, you just threw me off a little bit.
That's what I'm here for.
Are we saying is that nothing is to be reported or submitted to the council by May 31st?
No, we're saying the opposite.
Ballot initiative
Yeah,
must be done
the
by
ballot
31st.
issues, what we want to go on the ballot
In 18.
in 2018, this year, 2018, then we'll have authority to do so.
One more, just, I don't know if I
Mr.
covered
PT?
this in depth enough. I'll get on the soapbox. My concern about the elephant, okay, is that we scrutinize it with as much detail, in as much detail as we have done with the current, with the existing charter language. I don't know how we do that, because I've got, it's more detailed. It talks about nominating committees and who's on a nominating committee. And I've got some serious questions about the proposed members of the nominating committee. I wanted the opportunity to vet all of that. And are we going to be able to discuss changes, proposed changes to the ABA document? Or we're going to either, it is what it is, and we either say yes or no, or will we be able to propose changes to the ABA proposal? I mean, these are all questions that we haven't really addressed yet. And I just think, what we're talking about is, not to critique Mr. Lawler too harshly, but, a 1 mil carrot tax and a drastic, a tear down of our former government and a rebuild in a completely different form is apples and bowling balls. Not at all the same. But, and I still get to the point, what is the hurry? I don't think Mr. Gyro said it very correctly, I believe. I don't think very many people in the parish are even paying attention to this. We got 12 guys supposedly at a crawfish ball talking about wanting to get rid of a parish president. What happens next year when 50 guys go to a crawfish ball and they want to go back? I mean, are they going to be given the same credence that this group has been? And, that gets into, there is a mechanism established in our charter, which is our Constitution, just like our federal Constitution gives you the means to amend it. We have those means established in our charter. And when citizens want to get together and petition for a change in our form of government, the mechanism is in place to do so. And it takes 33% of the voting electorate to sign a petition. Now, that's 25,000 people, because we got roughly 75,000 voters in this parish. I've watched all of the council and committee meetings that took up this issue, and I counted 15 different people who came to the rostra and spoke in favor of this. So that's a far cry from 25,000 people. And to me, this has been rushed through. It's been opportunistic, and it was the opportunism is because we got an indicted parish president. And what I am most concerned about is I do not want to be denied the opportunity to vet every comma and every clause in ABA's proposal. And if we're going to commit to doing that, I'm good. We can bring them here right now, and we can forget about the rest of the charter, because now we know what this is really about.
And that's what
Mr.
I was.
Burnett?
I'm sorry, and that's what I was about to mention. If we are going to agree with the proposal I was about to call you Brother Dawson. to Councilman Dawson. Why can we begin to eat on this elephant and begin to put the elephant on the agenda, start bringing in the experts, and then once we get to that point, we understand, okay, what charter we're going to be based upon.
Yes, that's our intent, and I think it has been agreed upon by this committee, or the majority of us, that during the month of May, the first 2 weeks of May, 2 Mondays, that we will go forward with ABA or any other organization that want to come before us. We're not going to cold water any organization. I mean, we're open, and everybody has a right to voice their opinion, and then from there we vet it, and then we vote as we see fit to recommend to the parish council.
I think what Mr. Burnett is saying here is, as I understand it, what we're doing here with the current home rule charter would be a triggering effect if a whole change of government would fail, per se. So I think what Mr. Burnett here is saying is, if that's the case, and we are extending the time to make additional changes to the current charter, and I think Mr. P.T. saying the same thing, well, let's just set this aside since it will go further and immediately go into the elephant, the ABA, and so forth, starting from the next meeting and so forth. But also for further clarification, I think we had agreed upon experts coming the 14th and the 21st of May.
Yeah,
So-
two Mondays in May, I'm sorry. I said the first 2 weeks, but 2 Mondays in May. That's still in accordance, no changes to that. So we'll have those individuals come before us. And again, they will be voicing their organization's opinion. Okay, Mr. P.T.
I just want to point out that the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
Sort of knew that was coming.
What section first? No, just messing with you.
Motion.
Motion. Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Dawson, and second, well, first of all, Mr. P.T. withdrew his motion, so now we're going back to the original motion.
I'm not so sure anymore.
You
but-
sure? Okay, we're going back to the original motion. It's been moved and second. Any opposition to the motion? Any opposition? We have thoroughly discussed it. Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion is hereby adopted. And Mr. Dawson, thank you for your time this evening. Now we'll go back up to 4D, Section 504, which is entitled Human Resources Department. Scroll back up. Okay, we don't have any comments coming from the audience on this section per se. Okay. Yes, we don't have any coming from the audience. What's the pleasure of the committee on Section 504, Human Resources Department?
Motion for discussion.
So moved by Mr. Hernandez for discussion.
I'll second the discussion.
Second on discussion by Mr. Lawler. The floor is open. Any comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Hernandez.
Reading through the Human Resources Department, they don't have any qualifications for the Human Resource Director. I mean, we got a lady that's got more qualifications now than, I mean, there's nothing in there. It goes, Personnel Director shall be appointed by the President, and then the next paragraph is, they talking about the review board, so I think we need to.
I'm thinking, and I'm not sure, I'm just thinking out loud, that there are specific job duties for everybody on the organizational chart, I would imagine.
Oh, wait, we got an org chart?
Don't even go there.
I couldn't let that one go. I'm sorry.
Okay, but anyway, okay, I'm assuming, but anyway, if
Okay.
not, we could ask the secretary to please avail to us what we do have in existence.
Okay.
From
That would be
parish.
fine. I didn't see anything in the charter itself.
Okay,
And
Mr. P.T.?
thank you, Chairman Queezer. And I know Mr. Dawson left, Mr. Lawler's here. There were some ordinances that were recently passed having to do with concerning the org chart, or I think there was some talk about qualifications in those ordinances. Having never read the ordinance since they hadn't been published in Muni Code and they're not publicly available, without a records request, which I didn't do. Maybe Mr. Lawler can kind of shed some light on if there are any qualifications?
Yeah, off the top of my head, I can't recall what specific qualifications there are. I mean, this is something that we should definitely revisit, just like we have qualifications for legal counsel, secretaries, and all that. I think we should revisit. I just don't remember it off the top of my head.
I would second the revisiting part. We're going to throw that one on the wall. Okay.
Okay.
And you're right. We have a highly qualified individual now.
Right.
It'd be nice to keep up. I mean, qualifications,
If
that's
Mr.
the key to getting
Means
good
a lot.
people.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If this is something we can task
Yes.
our secretary with giving us a copy of what ordinances were passed and anything having to do with qualifications of the HR director would be nice to have. Because maybe this is something that should be handled by the governing authority pursuant to an ordinance. I don't know that we need to have qualifications in the charter, but.
I agree.
Okay. And so the proper motion would be to tag it, put it on the wall?
Yeah, with the test, our secretary to provide us with that operative language.
Correct. Mr. Trosclair?
Certainly.
Can we have that information emailed to us prior to the next meeting so we can do a little more
Sure.
research as well?
Sure. I don't see where that would be a problem.
That's fine.
Okay, so it's moved and second to tag this as an item that we will revisit. Any opposition to the motion? Any opposition? Hearing none, motion is hereby passed. Okay, next section is that of 5, Article 4, governing authority, in particular, Section 4-15, compensation of employees, continued review from last meeting. Section 4-15. Let me make sure that we don't have anyone from the audience on this one. No. We don't have anyone from the audience. Let me switch to it.
Chairman Queezer?
Yes, sir.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken from last time, that this was Mr. Dawson's baby, because I'm not familiar. I wouldn't, until I saw the minutes that were forwarded by Sentiment earlier this week, I wasn't aware that we were coming back to this. So
Yeah.
I think this was Chairman Dawson's and maybe Ms. Casso's as well.
I'll
but-
say, I move
Yes.
that we table this to the next meeting.
Second.
All right, moved and second to table this section to the next meeting. Any opposition on the motion? Hearing none, the motion is hereby passed. Well, we have concluded the agenda for this evening, and we are postured now for a motion for adjournment.
So, second.
So moved by Mr. Gyro, second by Mr. Lawler. Meeting is hereby adjourned.